Super fast plug. If you want to support the channel and wear some HelloGreedo gear, check out the link in the description below. Thrawn, released in April of 2017, written by Timothy Zahn. I read Heir to the Empire when I was probably 10 years old. If I had to guess, it was around 1996 or so, and I picked it up at a book fair that my elementary school would often host. I loved those things. I don't know if they still do them in schools, but they were like the highlight of that school year. You know, I saw a Star Wars book on the shelf that I didn't recognize, characters on the cover that I did not recognize, and that was my and the world's first introduction to Thrawn. That was over 20 years ago, and I honestly don't remember that book at all. I don't even know if I processed it fully at that age. I mean, yeah, I guess I remember the basics, but I don't know if that's because I remember reading it or just because the book is in the zeitgeist, and as a Star Wars fan, you kind of absorb things in the periphery over time, even if you yourself don't remember directly encountering and absorbing the information. So when I found out that a new canon Thrawn book was being written by Timothy Zahn, I was intrigued. I was happy to hear this character was going to be solidified as canon, especially because he seems to be a fan favorite, and I was excited to see that he was going to be further explored. So when my daughter was born, I bought a Kindle, read a few books on it, and then decided to read Thrawn. Thrawn is somewhat of an origin story. It seems to be marketed as an origin story, but I don't know if I'd really call it an origin story. It's more of a story focusing on the origin of his career in the Galactic Empire, not necessarily his origin story, at least in the conventional sense as I see it, if that makes sense. My favorite aspect of the novel was seeing some of the background action, the day-to-day operations, the political and scheming side of things. Military and civilian alike often vying for influence and self-gain, and then here's Thrawn. He doesn't necessarily thirst for power or influence, at least in this novel. His motivations are a little different for rising through the ranks. In a way, reading Thrawn felt like an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, at least the beginning. A strange alien. Strange circumstances, language and cultural barriers, assimilation, control, figuring out organizations. It was an interesting plot, one that was refreshing to read and experience in Star Wars. The book was never extremely exciting. It was more of just an interesting read. Even during action sequences, the focus is more on the suspense of what Thrawn was doing while keeping everyone in the dark about his plans. I do have some issues with Thrawn as a character. Again, I haven't seen him in Rebels yet. I've only watched the first season of that show, and I read Heir to the Empire like 20 years ago. So this book is kind of my entry to Thrawn. And after reading the book, Thrawn as a character got a little exhausting to me. A little eye-rolly at times. He reminds me of the detective from Murder on the Orient Express. That detective is just too good. You know, he walks into a room and like a goddamn supercomputer with a time machine attached to it can instantly know exactly what happened at the crime scene. He's too good at solving mysteries that there's literally no suspense because he just walks in the room, sees a fork on the ground and goes, aha! The murderer ate a salad, dropped the fork, walked to the bathroom, read an article on his smartphone, wiped his ass and shot the passenger. He's just too good. There's no faults, there's no contemplation, he's just automatically awesome, and when your detective is basically a superhero, it doesn't make for an exciting detective story. That's kind of how Thrawn felt to me the more the book progressed. At the beginning, it was charming. He was figuring things out. People were impressed by his abilities to strategize. He rose through the ranks, but then each battle or strategic decision just felt like, yeah, this'll work, it'll work out, because Thrawn is the detective from Murder on the Orient Express. Thrawn rarely told people his plans in the moment, forcing people to just trust him. Granted, you know, time is of the essence, and Thrawn just wanted to get shit done, I get it. But as much as I like the character's tone, intelligence, strategic mind, concern for casualties, and his hard to define innocence, his presence became a little uninteresting to me as the novel progressed. It was the events around Thrawn that I found interest in. Thrawn's translator, helper, aide, and all-around sidekick is named Eli Vanto. Eli has been placed alongside Thrawn, seemingly unwillingly, at least at first. He had his career path planned out, but that goes out the window when this Chiss appears. Eli is there as an audience plant, a character who is in the middle of the story but doesn't really do that much other than kind of have expository dialogue told to him by someone in the know so that the audience or the reader can better understand what is going on in the moment. When Thrawn was hatching a plan, we'd be inside of Eli's head as he tries to figure out how all the pieces are moving, and then Thrawn tells him flat out the scenario, thereby telling us what's going on, what his plan was. I did enjoy getting inside of Eli's head though. He was a student of Thrawn, studying his tactics, trying to better understand how this brilliant military tactician operates, and in doing so, became relatively adequate at figuring things out before they happened, or at least following along with a plan. And he became very trusting of Thrawn. You know, through the story, he was a little apprehensive. Does this guy really know what the hell he's doing? And by the end, yeah, Thrawn's got it. He's got it. It was a subtle evolution. I found myself interested in Eli's motivations, his failures, his career path, and what he had to gain by following Thrawn. My favorite part of the book was the beginning. Well, probably the first half. Thrawn is learning quickly. He doesn't speak basic very well. We're discovering Thrawn, and he's discovering this Galactic Empire and his place potentially in it. It was interesting to learn alongside everyone about Thrawn, and it was interesting to learn alongside Thrawn about everyone. The quote-unquote bad guy of the novel is named Night Swan. That's a code name, and he's kind of forgettable in a way, and he's just kind of a thorn in Thrawn's side. Night Swan pretty much narratively acts as a brain game for Thrawn to figure out. Thrawn is trying to figure out the identity of Night Swan and keep up with Night Swan's every move. He's following the breadcrumbs. I do like how the bad guy, Night Swan, of the story isn't really a bad guy per se. His motivations are understandable. He's not just some big bad generic bad guy. Obviously, we're reading the story from the perspective of the Empire, right? In this story, the Galactic Empire is kind of the good guys. They're kind of A-okay, and anyone who opposes it should be crushed. But yeah, maybe Night Swan's reveal would have hit me more if I watched a certain TV show before watching this. Who knows? But what I did like about the Night Swan storyline was how he wasn't just an overtly evil dude hell-bent on blowing some shit up. He was a tactician like Thrawn. He was a thorn in Thrawn's side. He was a smuggler, a slippery little shit who could avoid detection. He was a mind puzzle for Thrawn to figure out. The subplot with Governor Price was interesting to me. I liked that side of the story quite a bit. It was full of political posturing, deception, scheming. I found it to be one of the more interesting things to follow in the novel. Her motivations were pretty clear. She had somewhat selfish intentions and seemed to be playing the long game to rise through the ranks, earn trust, and accomplish what she wanted to accomplish. Before going into the book, I was completely unaware how connected Star Wars Rebels and this novel are. A lot of characters from Rebels pop up in Thrawn apparently, and like I said, I've only seen the first season of Rebels. I plan on watching it when I finish the Clone Wars, but if you watched Rebels, you might get even more out of Thrawn than I did. Just because the presence of certain characters that you're familiar with. It might be a very different experience for you reading the novel than it was for me. I thought Thrawn was executed very well. The pacing of the book is fantastic. It's one of the things I love about it. The descriptive writing style is great, not too much, not too little. It hit the Goldilocks zone of description. Timothy Zahn is certainly a talented writer. Everybody knows that, right? I was always engaged with the page. As a character, I like Thrawn, but I'm still a little curious why he gets so much fan love. He's a really interesting character in the book, and I liked him most of all early on when he was figuring things out. So I'm wondering what I'll think of him after reading the next Thrawn book in the series and watching Rebels. Let me know what you guys think of Thrawn in terms of the book if you've read it and the character in the comment section below. As kind of a Thrawn noob, I'm very curious why he is a super fan favorite, without spoilers of course. HelloGreedo, out.